waiting for the next move, anticipating the next groove, and the road is long, and you're only as strong as your next move. Begin Again is up next on Rediscovered Movies. Hello, my name is Nomfanelo Malloy. I am your host of Rediscovered Movies, where overlooked movies, whether mainstream, independent, or somewhere in between, are discussed to be rediscovered for your viewing pleasure. Begin Again is a 2013 musical/drama written and directed by John Carney, who is known for doing Once and Modern Love. The film stars Keira Knightley, Mark Ruffalo, Adam Levine, Hailee Steinfeld, Cee-Lo Green, and Catherine Keener. Here's the official synopsis. Greta, played by Keira Knightley, and her longtime boyfriend, played by Adam Levine, are college sweethearts and songwriting partners who decamp for New York when he lands a deal with a major label. But the trappings of his newfound fame soon tempt Dave to stray, and the reeling, lovelorn Greta is left on her own. Her world takes a turn for better when Dan, played by Mark Ruffalo, a disgraced record label exec, stumbles upon her performing on the East Village stage and is immediately captivated by her raw talent. From this chance encounter emerges an enchanting portrait of a mutually transformative collaboration set to the soundtrack of a summer in New York City. The film premiered at the Toronto Film Festival back in 2013 under a different name called Can a Song Save Your Life, which I'll get into that later. The film had a limited release in theaters back in June 24th, 2014, which opened at number 15 with over 134,000. When it opened wide on July 11th, it opened to number 9 with 2.8 million. It was behind such blockbuster films as Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Transformers: Age of Extinction, and 22 Jump Street. So during its theatrical run, it made a total of 63.4 million, which is 16.1 domestic and 47.2 international. In terms of reception, the film has 83% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. Here's what they had to say with the consensus. Writer-director John Carney's return to musical drama isn't quite as potent as it was with Once, but thanks to charming work from its well-matched leads, Begin Again is difficult to resist. Audience gave it 81%. The film was nominated for an Oscar for Best Original Song for Lost Stars, but it lost to Glory by Common and John Legend from the movie Selma. The film is available to stream on Amazon Prime and on video on demand. Check your local listings. All right, let's start with first discoveries. So with this category, I talk about how I first learned about the movie, my initial reactions when I first saw it, and has those changed since then. So I first heard about the film when it had its premiere at TIFF under the different title. I didn't know much in terms of plot, but just based off the lineup with the cast, I figured, it could sound interesting. Because at that point, with the musicals I've seen, have been more on the lighter fare for the most part. So I figured with this one being more of a drama, I figured, I'd like to give this one a shot, but I'll wait for the trailer to decide whether I want to see it. So after when the trailer came out, I thought, I really want to see this movie because it focuses on our two leads who are dealing with their personal issues, one being alcoholic and away from his family, while the other dealing with heartbreak and contemplating on leaving the city to go back to their hometown. And I saw the movie in theaters during opening weekend when it had its wide release, and I loved it because I loved, you know, how like it has themes of self discovery, like following your dreams, your passions. Because when films explore those themes, it kind of has like a soft spot for me. And yeah, I also love musicals. And I loved how like with this one, it felt very like grounded for musical. Like it wasn't overly like choreographed or overly produced, because this was more of like a concert musical where essentially we see them perform like either on stage or so forth than just singing randomly like on the street or somewhere. And yeah, obviously since the film I first saw it, I still love it. And it just made me appreciate other songs from the soundtrack more, because obviously Lost Stars like is like the staple song of the musical, because essentially like with musicals there's always that one song that'll get promoted, be like played everywhere. Lost Stars was essentially that song, just like with Shallow from A Star Is Born and City of Stars from La La Land, for as examples. Yeah, I just love that with this movie, it it really like romanticizes, like indie music, and also to New York City. I will have to say is that this movie really like hits hard on its commentary on music industry, which I'll get into in a bit. But I just want to say that because this movie came out after Once, I think people had like those high expectations for this movie to either be like better than Once or as good as Once. I didn't see Once until like many years later after its release. I think probably on Netflix before Disney Plus came about. And I do love Once. Like I've only seen like one time, and the music's there. It's good, but it's not something that I would listen to on repeat. And for me, I'd probably be on the minority on this, but I think Begin Again is a better film than Once, because like obviously like with Once, like one of the positives about that is that the two leads are like love interests, and they became a couple off camera. And obviously too, like it has like a more like romantic feel to that than with Begin Again, because with Begin Again, like even though like it has like a bigger like production value, like it still has like that indie feel. Like it's very grounded. Like I said, it's not overtly produced. So I'll break down my thoughts under highlights and lowlights. One of the things I like about this movie is the soundtrack. I like how the soundtrack, it kind of has an indie vibe to it, like adult alternative or adult top 40. Essentially, like if you listen to those types of music, with this soundtrack will be up in your alley. Greg Alexander, who's the former frontman of New Radicals with the notable song You Get What You Give, he pretty much is in charge of the score and the songs. And yeah, he did a good job with it, because I liked, with the music, it's really all about like the instruments and vocals without being overly produced. So obviously like Lost Stars like is the favorite of this movie, whether it is the Keira Knightley version or Adam Levine version. I would say for that song, the Shub version that Adam Levine plays near the end of the movie is the best one. which obviously is like the popular version of the song. And but I also want to say like it also has some good songs too, like with "A Step You Can't Take Back," which is played during the bar sequence where Greta and Dave they meet for the first time. "Coming Up Roses," which is played during the sequence where Greta's playing with the live band, and you have the kids doing background vocals. "Like a Fool," also that song when Greta and Steve they leave the voicemail to Dave, and "Tell Me If You Want to Go Home," which is during the sequence where Greta and the band they are playing at night, while we have Violet, Hailee Steinfeld's character, and Miriam there in that scene. So yeah, like if I would say yeah, like check out the soundtrack because even though like yeah, like I said, Lost Stars like is like the notable song, I would recommend checking out the other ones as well. Mark Ruffalo and Keira Knightley's performances are solid, as I like how with Ruffalo he does not go over the top when he's drunk. Because usually, if someone is playing that type of role, it could be hit and miss, depending on the tone of the film. But I like here like how like it's not like over the top where he's just comedic relief, because clearly we could tell like with his character like has really gone through some things and is hitting hard times. And with Keira Knightley, apparently this is her first role where she had to sing, and she did a good job because with her voice there's like a roughness to it. It's not polished, which works because I feel like if it was any other director, it would have been more, I guess, refined or more like edited. So yeah, kudos to Keira Knightley. I hope she explores, doing musicals, whether it is, for theater or for film, or like maybe, you know, she could do some songs with her husband, who is also a musician. And also, to another highlight is the film's commentary on the music industry. So basically, this film is pro artists. Essentially, artists need to get or deserve to get their due when it comes to making money. So there's a moment in the film when Greta and Dan are meeting Saul, who's played by Yasiin Bey, aka Mostef. Essentially, like Saul tells Greta that he loves her work, but wants to give her $1 out of 10, or you could say like 10% out of the 100, which, is messed up because her and Dan did all of the work themselves. They did not record in the studio. They didn't have much money to pay everyone until Troublegum, offers to pay everyone. So essentially, they did the work themselves, and I guess the record executives they want to take a huge chunk out of the artist pay. So yeah, like it shows that I guess things are kind of like better now, hopefully, but it kind of rings like true in terms of what I guess artists have to go through, like because unless if you do more like production work behind the scenes type stuff, like the artist will get a small amount even though they should get bigger. So back to that point with Dan, he essentially wants to focus on the art, being artistic, wanting to change the game, if you would. While Saul, he really is about selling records, making money, and willing to change, whether that's good or bad change, mainly bad change, in order to achieve that goal. Which really, you could tell, like, puts like a damper in their relationship as record executives. And we see kind of Dan, like, like, he's sad that with record executives, like, they just want to put work that doesn't really do much, because during like the car scene, when Dan is listening to the various demos in the car, like, obviously, like, those demos are not good, but we see, like, with the direction in terms of what the record labels want to go to, it kind of like suggests that with record labels, they just want to focus on what's trending out there than being out of the box. And yeah, also to like a highlight with Dan and Saul, like their fractured relationship, like, it's kind of like up and down, because we see Dan, is fired, obviously, like, for being drunk and embarrassing himself. But then once he cleans himself up, he gets rehired, but then fired, which is shown in the post credit scene after posting Greta's album online for $1. And so with Greta, she essentially wants authenticity, but is deemed to have an attitude because she's not willing to change her appearance, because she wants people to focus on her vocals, like what she could bring. So she has a like indie singer songwriter vibe, because she even says music is about the ears, not the eyes. And she also said she wants to be similar to like Randy Newman, where he is just a guy performing his songs while just dressing casual. And we see her, yeah, like wearing lots of like baggy sweaters at the beginning. But we see that to sort of change in her later fashion sense is kind of similar to, I would say, Taylor Swift. Loved that, with what it had to say in terms of the industry, it definitely rings true to today, like, especially when streaming is into play, because obviously various artists have come out saying that, yeah, like, the artists, like, we want our fair share, and loved that this movie kind of hits hard on those points. Also, what I liked with Greta, I loved her nude pop filter. Like, it looks flexible. Maybe it's not. And it looks like it has like a strap or maybe like a ribbon of some sort. Because that would be like a cool filter to have. Dan's storyline, I would say, like, out of all the characters in this movie, his storyline is, I would say, the strongest, because clearly we see him going through tough times, being alcoholic, like being drunk, and also to being disillusioned with the current music industry. And we see, like, he clearly, like, he has a vision when he sees Greta for the first time. Like, when we see his POV of the opening sequence with the instruments moving at certain points of the song, which clearly shows that, he is a visionary, or he is like the, I guess, conductor trying to create like a masterpiece. And loved, his relationship with Greta and his relationship with Violet. We show that, yeah, like, he deeply cares for his daughter, even though the daughter wears a lot of revealing clothing, because she's, dealing with some things, because she's interested in the guy and really tries hard to go after him, which is not the best approach. And also, too, he still has feelings for his ex-wife Miriam, as in various points of the film, you see he has like the splitter in the car, and when like he uses that with Miriam during the end scene, that was a sweet moment for those two to be together. The montage of Dan and Greta recruiting the musicians for her live album is great. I like especially to the moment where the piano man he quits his ballet gig in the middle of a session, which like I felt terrible like for the kids, but I mean, but at the same time, he he does what he has to do. James Corden does like a good job of his role, even though like it's like supporting role. Like it was just watching it now, it was just interesting to see, James Corden in an acting role because now like, he's known for doing the Late Late Show, which, is a different phase of his career. Like he still does, acting, but like when I saw the film at the first time, like I didn't know who he was, and then watching it now, it's just different. Like it feels kind of weird, but at the same time, who cares? He has a moment at the party scene where he tells everyone to try not to dance to the song, which is fun to watch with the whole freeze frame thing. But at the same time, you just wonder like why do the people freeze in a particular way when they could have just either stand still or just walk to get food or something like that. And I would say the ending with Dave playing Lost Stars is nice. It was nice to see, him and Greta have like their moment where she's watching him from backstage and he invites her to perform and she declines. And clearly we see like, those two, like they moved on as they're at different phases of their career. And then we cut to her like on the bike. It was kind of cheesy, like when it showed the close up of her face as she sees like Dan and Miriam, and but really other than that, solid. Now, even though the film has some highs, there are definitely some lows, which I'll break down in Lowlights. Let's start with Dave. First off, Adam Levine, he does a good job with his performance. I saw on Wikipedia that he apparently declined to get paid for this movie, and he won his role after his Skype meeting with the director. So clearly, he is passionate about this movie, and just want to point out that apparently the director only considered him for the role. So, anyways, back to Dave. His beard game is all over the place. Because as we see him get more arrogant and cocky, we see the beard grow. So, in the restaurant scene with Greta, his beard is more fluffy, like it's really outgrown. But then the next shot with him at the park with Greta, it's obviously like more trimmed. Yes, like the bushiness is still there, but it's a bit more refined. And I just wonder, like, was this because there were some reshoots that happened, or something like that? Because there, it could have been one of those scenes could have been reshot just for the sake of continuity, because that was noticeable to watch with this movie. And there's a point in the film, this was when he plays a song for Greta called A Higher Place, which was apparently done during his trip from LA. So I guess that is like the breakup scene. So I just want to read the lyrics just so you guys get a picture. I don't know if I'm the fool who's getting this all wrong. That's the dream to sing, the perfect girl, the perfect song. All I know is I can't keep on wearing this disguise when you're the only one that sees what's real in my eyes. You take me to another space and time. You take me to a higher place. So I'm about to get out of the race. I don't mind. You ought to know that everything's nothing if I don't have you. So apparently that song is about the assistant Mim, then Greta. So I just wonder, why would he play that song to Greta when it's clearly about Mim? So there's an indication that they had an affair. But I just wondered, like, what was his intentions? Like, what was his motives in that scene? Like, was he tired of Greta? So he's like, you know what? I'm gonna play this song and I don't care about her feelings. Like, or like, what did he expect to fool Greta by thinking it's about her when it's not? Like I said, his motives at that point are questionable. Obviously, like at this point, he is more arrogant, more cocky, even though he's trying to like conceal it when he's with Greta. But I mean, obviously, there are signs that indicate otherwise. His On the Road album cover is garbage. Clearly, it is like Photoshop because it basically has him like in the hoodie and jeans looking down with the road or the highway backdrop. I'm just like, he could have put in some work with that cover because as like a pop star, what was he thinking with that choice? I mean, I would imagine that probably his team chose that cover, not him. I don't know. But obviously, like we see like in music, like the album covers have higher expectations. And if I were to consider to buy that album based off the cover, I would clearly not buy it. I mean, I wouldn't buy it like for other things because of his overly produced, manufactured pop music. Because clearly, like, yeah, he's popular, and I feel like that album would have probably flopped, and he would have probably like considered his choices in life. I'm just saying. Speaking of album, let's go to the live album. Like, it was nice to see Greta, Dan, and I guess the band record live, to hear, to include, soundscapes from the city, whether that's traffic, people making noise, so forth. But I felt like with the music, it could have been recorded live than having the actors use pre-recorded tracks. So that was certainly a choice because it is common for musicals to use pre-recorded tracks as they are filming. I mean, we see, that's starting to change a bit, like with Les Mis, as an example, where they recorded their tracks live. But I felt, yeah, like here, like it was a missed opportunity to do so. But again, that is the director's choice, but I felt like that was a miss. With the opening sequence of Greta singing at the bar, why was it shown 3 times? Because I get showing Greta's perspective, and then with Dan's, and then they showed it briefly the third time. That could have been removed. It could have been mentioned through dialogue, or just don't reference it at all. When Greta was with Dave, Was she like an assistant? Because she basically gets the team coffee, whether that was voluntarily or not. And she essentially puts her career on hold just to support Dave. So that part was not clear. Because I mean, like honestly, like she is capable of going on her own as an artist. So she really didn't have to do those choices. But again, I guess we need conflict, in this movie. And with Dan and Greta, are they supposed to be love interests? Question mark. I mean, maybe like with the trailers, it might indicate that, but clearly, like they're supposed to be like friends or I guess co-workers. But there is a moment. This was after their meeting with Saul. They look at each other like deeply before they part their separate ways. So that shot was like questionable if they're supposed to be friends. I mean, maybe like people thought that this movie, just like with Once, the two our two leads were going to be love interest, but that's not the case. I'm happy that they left them off as friends because Dan still has feelings for Miriam, while with Greta, she focuses on being independent. So with that choice to have them share like a moment was questionable. On to some trivia. I want to start off with this one, which I would heavily consider to be a low light of this movie, which even though it was behind the scenes. So in May 2016, John Carney he told The Independent that he enjoyed working with Mark Ruffalo and Levine, but didn't like Keira Knightley's performance in this film under his direction. He said, quote, "It's not like I hate the Hollywood thing, but I like to work with curious, proper film actors as opposed to movie stars. And I learned that I'll never make a film with supermodels again." He later apologized after getting flack about it and recanted his statement. What was this guy thinking when he said that publicly? Because if he didn't like her performance, he could have just recasted the role. And it was just a low blow for him to admit that publicly. So shame on him. But apparently, Keira Knightley, she said, I believe in 2019, that she accepted his apology and admitted that they did not get along while filming this movie. So, another fun fact, as I mentioned earlier, the original title for the film was Can a Song Save Your Life? Apparently, that was changed after they had the premiere at TIFF, that people, they couldn't remember it and was often misquoted. But except with when it was released in Germany, they kept that original title. But in France, the film was called New York Melody, which is interesting. When Greta and Dave they get their apartment in New York, apparently it's the real house of Adam Levine and his wife Bahati Prinsloo. Keira Knightley she had to learn to play guitar for the role. Her husband, musician James Wrighton, he offered his help, but according to Knightley, his lessons were disastrous and almost led to divorce and murder. I mean, despite, her feelings, towards that, like I said, she did a great job with this role and I would love to see her like explore, musicals, whether that's, for the film, the theater, or maybe she could collab with her husband. And yes, so when they record the first live song, one of the children that was playing in the alley is Mark Ruffalo's son, Keen, which was interesting. And apparently, some of the dialogue is improvised, particularly from Mark Ruffalo and James Corden. I guess that's not surprise. Like in a way, like it could provide some level, I guess, of authenticity or like being genuine. Given that this movie has like a documentary type feel to it, so I can tell like which parts I would assume when Mark Ruffalo's character is drunk, or like with Corden, like with his scenes with Keira Knightley. But yeah, like kudos to that. Now, the important question is, why should this movie be rediscovered? The soundtrack is a banger. Loved the indie feel to it. Greg Alexander did a good job with the production value. And like I said, check out the other songs in the soundtrack. Obviously, Lost Stars is the favorite, but the other songs are also worthwhile. Also, too, New York City. I loved that with this movie, like, New York City in a way is kind of like romanticized, but also grounded at the same time, because we don't see too many like landmarks in this movie, as the characters are recording like in back alleys, rooftops, and so forth, but it kind of has like a charm to it in terms of how the city is portrayed. Mark Ruffalo and Keira Knightley's performance, solid. And yeah, Keira Knightley did a great job with her first singing role. And of course, Mark Ruffalo always brings it 100% with his roles. The film like has like a charm to it, like a sweetness, as it focuses on two people, different phases of their careers, trying to change themselves for the better as they deal with their personal issues. Loved the film's commentary on the music industry, which definitely rings true to today, especially since we have streaming that into play. Like I said, this movie is pro artist getting their fair compensation for their work. And John Carney, despite his comments on Keira Knightley, does a good job with the overall look and the tone of the film. So if you have not seen the film or want to rewatch it, it is available on Amazon Prime and Video on Demand. So check your local listings. That is a wrap on this episode of the podcast. You can submit questions, comments, and suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com. Those will be read along with a recap of the season, which will air after the season finale. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at RDMoviesPod for updates. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.